Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. We're going to be talking about female hormones. Are your female hormones causing your acne and your skin issues? We're going to dive into this topic today. This is an issue I get in practice all the time with my female patients. One of the top complaints when there's female hormone issues is acne alongside with it. We may also see mood issues, energy issues, maybe cognitive issues, maybe even weight issues. But skin is a hallmark of usually some type of hormonal imbalance. There's a paper here I have on this topic. We're going to dive in. I'm going to review it with you here. But essentially, I'll go through the monthly cycle and what that looks like. When there's hormone imbalances throughout the month, that can impact lots of things. Also, imbalances in the gut, in the microbiome, I've always been told, is that your skin is a mirror of your gut. So when you have poor gut function, you can expect your skin to actually reflect that. And your skin is actually the biggest organ of your body. People don't know that. Your skin is part of your integumentary system. So it plays a major role in detoxification, and your body will push things through the skin, a la sweat, a la acne and skin issues, if you have toxicity issues. And many toxins are stored in the fat cells. So when you eat, let's say, non-organic meat, animals have been fed Roundup, lots of grains that are loaded with mycotoxins. That'll be pushed into the animal's fats. Again, if the animals are not healthy enough, they will not be able to detoxify. They'll isolate it into the fat cell. And again, guess what? You're eating that meat, you're getting that fat, and you're going to be getting those toxins passed into you. And that could put more stress on your skin and your detoxification system. So really important to keep in mind. Again, in practice, I take a look and I actually test these things. We'll look at some of the big hormonal imbalances that tend to drive skin issues. So with skin issues, we'll see a lot of times the last half of the cycle, I'll show you lower estrogen and lower progesterone. Progesterone plays a major role in modulating prostaglandins. Prostaglandins play a role in helping your uterus contract and things like that. Progesterone helps modulate that. Certain fatty acids, especially GLA fatty acids, help modulate that too. When you modulate those prostaglandins, those same compounds, those chemical messengers also increase sebum production. So we can modulate there. Insulin and androgens play a major role with that as well. Insulin, ovarian cyst issues, that's the same mechanism. Hyperinsulinism due to blood sugar fluctuations can drive more insulin. Insulin drives more sebum. Sebum then feeds or is the fuel for the bacteria on the skin, the acne vulgaris bacteria that eats that type of sebum and can create inflammation in the skin, cystic inflammation. So really important. Lots of different things can be driving factors. So one of the first important things is hydration. Second thing is good, clean, organic food. That's going to be the first thing. And the third thing is going to be getting your food glycemically appropriate. The more we up and down our blood sugar swings, the more we potentially going to drive insulin. And the more we drive insulin, we upregulate the enzyme 1720 lyase, which is going to increase your androgens, is going to increase your testosterone, and that can also increase DHT as well, which can cause more sebum, and that sebum can then be the fuel for the bacteria on your skin. Let me go into this study here real quick. So first off, out of the gate, let me show you this picture. This is a good little picture here to break down what a typical cycle looks like here. So this is a good image. I like it. Phase 1, they call it progesterone. I really like it estrogen because estrogen actually starts to increase here. The first domino that happens is FSH. Follicle stimulating hormone grows that follicle. As that follicle starts to grow, now it's starting to increase estrogen. So estrogen starts to increase. As estrogen goes up here, LH starts to occur in the pituitary. That's what called luteinizing hormone. And that will start to increase progesterone. So estrogen leads, usually tops out around day 10 to 12. And then progesterone usually comes up right around that. And you'll see right around day 15 or so, it tends to peak out or tends to start to really increase. So right here is 14, 15. Yep. So right around 15, it starts to really pump up. So this spot right here, this is actually ovulation. This is where if this woman had intercourse, this is where pregnancy could happen, right? Sperm can live about 2-3 days. So typically you only really can get pregnant maybe 3 days a month, maybe 4 or 5. But yeah, so this is where that would happen right here. So progesterone really pumps up here. Now, estrogen tends to be anti-sebum, right? And so most women, when they have chronic issues with their hormones, estrogen tends to fall out early. So does progesterone. Now, progesterone helps modulate prostaglandins. And so that helps with you when you see lots of women having contractions, breast tenderness, ovarian cramping. That's going to be prostaglandins out of control. So estrogen's low, progesterone's low. That is going to be a dovetail of lots of PMS and hormonal issues. Most acne is going to exist in this premenstrual time frame. So if this woman has a 28-day cycle, right? Day one's right, basically right after this. Let's say this 3 to 7 day period is where you put your PMS time frame. That's your premenstrual time frame. So this is where you'd see a lot of acne kind of come into play. And so the first domino is FSH, the second domino is estrogen, third domino is LH, fourth domino is progesterone. Then we have ovulation in between. Then we have our follicular phase, our luteal phase, right? Follicular phase, F for follicular, first half, L for luteal, second half. These are the little mnemonic devices I create for myself to help me remember. And so the last half is where your progesterone is going to predominate. Okay, so really important. And you can see testosterone mostly stays flat throughout the month. And this is why women, they tend to have a little bit more libido around ovulation. Well, here's why. Look at this little bump in testosterone. It happens right during ovulation, basically. That's why women tend to get a little more frisky during that time frame. That's how physiology works. So really interesting. Now, let me go to this study here. Put this study in here. So this is called Adult Female Acne, a Guide to Clinical Practice. So a couple of interesting things in this study. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to just kind of give you my interpretation of what I think is important. I'm going to scroll down here. So they have an interesting little graph here that looks at a couple things, a couple contributing factors. I'll bring that table up here. So when we look at acne, conventional medicine really mismanages acne, right? They look at acne as saying, okay, we have this fuel source on the skin, right? The sebum. This bacteria eats that fuel. So what we're going to do is we're going to do topical things to kill that bacteria, whether it's benzoyl peroxide or some kind of an acid. We're going to do something to kill that bacteria. Now, that may make sense if you have, a spot treating issue, like let's say you ate some junky food and you have a pimple and it happens here or there. That's fine, for damage control, right? Someone that doesn't really have a lot of acne, but every now and then gets something, that totally works then, right? But what about people that have chronic acne? Right? Is the solution to really put acids and abrasive things on your skin all the time? I would argue not, because it's going to negatively impact the microbiome of the skin. So it talks about stress, and corticosteroids are a big component. Cortisol is a big one. What happens with cortisol? Well, cortisol is very catabolic, but it also mobilizes glucose. So when you mobilize glucose, what also comes along with glucose? We have insulin. So you can actually have blood sugar issues like you're eating sugar with cortisol stress situation. Plus, when we have cortisol surges, guess what happens? Well, when our body surges cortisol, it's mobilizing glucose, but it's also potentially giving you cravings for sweets, because sweets tend to bump up what? Dopamine, which helps buffer stress and cortisol. So the more stress you get, the more you eat junky foods. So then you tend to crave more foods that are going to cause more problems, because you're trying to get that little dopamine hit to kind of modulate that cortisol. Not to mention that cortisol is stimulating more glucose, which glucose then what? Stimulates insulin. Insulin causes that sebum to go. Different medications can be problematic. Smoking, endocrine issues. So we could put insulin resistance or dysglycemia. We could put lower progesterone here. Again, the things I'm talking about aren't really diseases. They're more imbalances, right? I like to stay in the world of function, not disease, because I'm a functional medicine doctor, not an allopathic doctor. But we can put them in that bucket, because a functional imbalance left long enough eventually becomes a disease, right? But we're trying to treat things whether in their imbalance stage. Again, changes in sebum. Again, what drives that? Dysglycemia, blood sugar, insulin, that which drives increases of androgens, whether it's DHEA. DHT is the big one. Testosterone and DHT are the big ones. That's why a lot of women, they'll find if we have lots of androgens, we may use different herbs like fenugreek, like saw palmetto, like peonia, like damiana. We may use herbs to modulate some of that. And of course, diet plays a big role. Dermatologists will ignore that, but we know that is the case. So a couple things out of the gate. So genetics is a predisposing factor. Androgens play a big role. So too much DHEA, too much DHT, this stimulates the sebaceous glands to produce sebum. Estrogens have the opposite effect. Remember how I said estrogens kind of help oppose that? Well, a lot of people in their cycle, right? If they're chronically stressed, they could have lower estrogen there. Now, you could still be estrogen dominant for a lot of reasons, because your progesterone's falling faster than your estrogen, or you have progesterone higher at other parts of the cycle. But estrogen does have the opposite effect and does inhibit the secretion of androgens. Again, most women, PCOS is a big deal. The main drug to treat increased androgens in women is, guess what? It's metformin or glucophage. That's an insulin sensitizing agent. That compound decreases gluconeogenesis in the liver. And then it also decreases glucose absorption in the stomach. So that's how it helps modulate that. So genes here, again, I'm not a big genetic fan because you're not born with acne, right? So obviously, once you hit teen years, there's a big surge there. But why do people have acne into their 20s and 30s? Why, right? That's more than just a genetic thing. Okay. Having some issues in your early teens makes sense because you're having glandular systems online for the first time. And most kids honestly eat like crap, right? Lots of sugar, lots of junk. Okay. So in relation to AFA, let's see, what are they defining AFA as? I hate when they use abbreviation. Okay, adult female acne. Got it. AFA. So adult female acne. Okay, got it. Let's continue to roll here. So it's talking about peripheral hormone conversion. So this is where we have 5-alpha reductase. This is what saw palmetto reduces. So that's the DHT. That's more androgens, right? It's a big one there. DHT is 5 to 10 times more potent. So when you increase testosterone, right, through that 1720 lyase, right, that can also increase DHT as well. That's why we'll use things like saw palmetto to help. Talks about the conditioning worsening in 60 to 70% time premenstrual. That's that 3 to 7 days before the end of their period, right? Your period is going to be when you menstruate. Most of them, I would say out of my, couple thousand women I've seen during my 10, 15-year career, when I ask women how long their cycle is, they instinctively say, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. They instinctively think cycle as menstruation. It's a weird thing. It's just like, I talked to other doctors and I said, do you notice this? And they're like, yeah. So there's like kind of a miseducation of women thinking their cycle is their menstruation. So it's not the case. Your cycle is typically 26 to 30 days, and that first 3 to 7 days is your menstruation. And that matters because if you have heavy menstrual flow, that can cause anemia and all kinds of other aerobic metabolism issues. But that 3 to 7 days before you menstruate, that's where most of this acne issue is going to happen. So really, really important. Other hormones besides androgens and estrogens regulate the production of sebum. Sebaceous glands is a neuroendocrine gland. So it talks about CRH, so corticotropin releasing hormones. So this is going to be your cortisol. Stress is going to have a big role. Excess conversion of DHEA. It talks about things like vitamin D helping, right? Can be a modulating factor. Insulin-like growth factor as well. So changes in sebum. This is why we'll use things like borage oil or evening primrose oil or black currant seed oil, which are really good fatty acids that can modulate some of these prostaglandins. Talking about the acne vulgaris, the acne bacteria on the skin using red light and things like that, hyperkeratinization. So they're talking about bacteria here, and then different immune issues, different inflammatory issues. This is why it's so important to have a really good diet, right? Because diet plays a major role with inflammation. Talking about high glycemic food. So again, glycemic foods are foods that raise your blood sugar fast, okay? So pure sugar has a glycemic index of 100. Again, really what matters is glycemic load because people just don't eat sugar by itself typically in a meal. Usually it's processed something with meat and fat. And so the load of the meal matters. But the more glycemically high the food is, the more processed it is, the least amount of fiber, the least amount of nutrients, then you're going to have more insulin issues. Dairy is a big one. So we'll always cut out dairy, even grass-fed butter. Again, I love that. It's good stuff, good vitamin K, good nutrients there, good carotenoids, but we'll cut that out at least for the first couple of weeks to a month to see how we do on that. Talks about aromatase, right? That converts testosterone to estradiol. Again, this is a bigger issue in men. So it talks about here the gonads and sebaceous glands have receptors for both hormones, which stimulate the production of androgens, such as testosterone inhibits the action that converts testosterone to estradiol. Yeah. And so what they're saying here is this will actually make it so your testosterone goes up more. Okay. mTOR is a big one. mTOR actually gets improved with fasting, right? Or bringing insulin down. Again, I'm not a big fan of women who are cycling, doing a lot of fasting because it can be a stressor on the body. But if you're healthy and you're in good shape, it's okay doing that, or at least do an intermittent fast, like a 12 by 12, right? Eat from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then take 12 hours off. That's a good one. Talks about the high glycemic foods. So in the more dairy products, that's a big one as well. Okay. And then the muscle foods that are rich in BCAAs, that's an mTOR thing, whey protein as well. So really interesting there. Talks about medications are associated with the development of acne. So different antibiotics, right? Cyclosporin, ramipril, iodide, bromides, vitamin B complex. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Could be a detoxification issue. Maybe you're upregulating methylation and you're pushing detoxification, right? Your skin's a mechanism of detoxification. Progestins, right? Even birth control pills can do that. So really interesting. So just to kind of highlight here, I like to just boil things down to what I can. Oh, right here. Let's see here. One more thing here. IGF-1 inhibits aromatase. I want to just see if there's anything else. So an adult, and where is it here? I just had it. An adult woman with acne and POS. It's important to evaluate the possibility of glucose intolerance. This is kind of my hallmark here. And I deal with women. One of the biggest things is I had a female patient today with acne. I'm like, let's pull out your blood sugar meter. Keto Mojo. Let's test the fasting. Let's test a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. This is called the functional glucose tolerance. Let's see where your blood sugar sits. Within 1 hour, before a meal, I want it below 100. Within 1 hour, I want it ideally 140 to 120 or below. And then hour 2, definitely below 100. Ideally, definitely below 120, but ideally below 100. And hour 3, definitely below 100. So 140 to 120, hour 1, 120 to 100, hour 2, definitely below 100, hour 3. That tells me that your blood sugar is up and coming down pretty fast. The faster your blood sugar goes down, typically the least amount of insulin you are making to bring it down, which means your cells are more sensitive, meaning you're not over secreting insulin, thus not overly secreting the sebum, which is going to mess up with your skin and cause more acne issues. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video here. Just wanted to give you that little bit of insight here. So clinically speaking, when I see lots of women here, one of the big things we'll look at is we'll look at estrogen detoxification. We'll look at insulin resistance. We'll look at we will look at things like prostaglandins. A lot of times we'll use herbs and essential fatty acids to modulate these prostaglandins. We'll look at androgens. We'll look at DHT. We'll look at DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. We'll look at these things. We'll run a free and total testosterone. We'll make sure we look at what's called the functional glucose tolerance. We won't do a 75-gram glucose drink. We'll actually use the food you eat day in, day out to see what's going on. So we'll really get a window under the hood. And then also dysbiotic gut bacteria plays a big role because that can make it harder for you to detoxify your hormones. The bacteria makes this enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. The dysbiotic bacteria causes that to be uncleaved. That bacteria, that hormone goes back in to circulation and makes it harder to detoxify. And again, hormones can, when they're out of balance, cause bacteria to grow and cause things to grow and can create situations that aren't quite as good. Right? So we've got to look at that. The skin is a really important mirror of health. When I look at that, I think estrogen, I think progesterone issues, I think blood sugar issues, I think overall gut inflammation, I think low progesterone, I think estrogen dominance. Even though estrogen can decrease sebum, I still think potential estrogen dominance and low progesterone. And again, it's not rocket science because when your progesterone can go low because it can pinch hit for cortisol. So the more stressed you are, the more inflamed you are, your body can take progesterone and pull it downstream to make cortisol out of it. That's super common. So if you want to dive in deeper, I always recommend getting your hormones looked at, get your diet looked at, run a simple functional glucose tolerance test, like I mentioned, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour fasting, right? Below 100, 120 to 140, 120 or below 100, hour 3. Okay, that's a good general perspective on what to look at, guys. If you want to dive in deeper, my coordinates will be down below where you can reach out to my team and staff. Be happy to get you in worldwide. We see patients with functional medicine support worldwide that have all kinds of hormone issues, including acne as part of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please let me know. Give me a thumbs up and please share with friends and family that could benefit. All right, guys, have a phenomenal day. Take care, y'all. Bye.